It is no secret that I want you to live a life you love, a life that you're obsessed with. And honestly, that starts with loving the life you're currently living. Because what if the problem wasn't the relationship or the job? What if the problem was you? Yeah, we're going to go there. So stay with me. I'm not blaming you, but we're going to get into how we can actually look at our career and see if we're unhappy because of the way we're thinking about it, the way we're showing up, or if we're unhappy because we're on the wrong path and we need to make a change. Today, I am joined by Angela McKay, a career intuitive vocation coach who is ICF certified, a certified mind rebel coach, and a certified Biddy tarot advisor. Angela has more than 2 decades of experience as an HR professional, and now she helps purpose-driven professionals find and create satisfaction in their careers through her signature method, Soul-Led Career. Angela, welcome to Becoming Obsessed.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy to join you here.
I am so excited to talk to you because this is something that I just feel has shaped my life so much. I grew up hearing people complain about their jobs for decades at a time and never really taking ownership of making that change or getting in a different job or looking at it differently. And, I understand jobs are hard. Running a business is hard. A career is hard. But at the same time, I learned that I didn't want to spend my time complaining. And I wanted to find out how I can take control and take ownership. The thing we spend the most hours doing, our work. And that's why I'm an entrepreneur. That's why I started this podcast. And so you are like my perfect guest to dig into this more and have the actual professional and experience of helping people do this. But I really want to start with your own change from being in HR, being in professional roles, and I assume corporate, over to having your own business, and kind of what that transition was and what the catalyst event was for you to be like, okay, let's take control and do something new here.
Okay, buckle up. I was with an organization for over 25 years. So I really grew up in that organization. I was still in college when I was there. I was there after I graduated college, having my family and everything. There was just always something there for me to do. I was really great at pointing at what it is that I wanted to do and just making it mine, which that sounds so simple, but there's a lot of power in pointing at something that you want and making it yours. And I took for granted that that was an ability of mine that not everybody shares. So that's part of what I incorporate into what I do now. But I found myself on the HR track of the organization. I love people, communications, advocating for people, creating programs that look at the different life stages and the different experiences that people have. As I was going along that HR leadership journey, there was just something that started to feel a little bit more disconnected for me. And by that time, once you've sunk that much time into your career and you've built your life around it, that's a dreadful feeling to get because you don't know what to do next. Your skill set seems very specific. You certainly don't want to start over because you like your house, you like the clothes that you're putting on. You don't want to have to scrap all of that. So there was a very pivotal moment when I was in my HR leadership track that it's actually my freebie now called the Career Compass. I never knew it was going to be my freebie later in life. It's just what I needed in that moment. And I started a list beside me. Everything that I did throughout the day, big or small, I wrote it on that list on basically a like or dislike category. And then I think it was about a week that I did that. And at the end of the week, I just went through the likes to see if there was a theme there. And every like had to do with a one-on-one interaction where I helped people to navigate where it is that they wanted to go or what it is that they needed to do or what their next step would be. Most of those situations I had no business knowing, like the specifics of it, the expertise portion of it, but I was able to help them to talk through that space. What that allowed me to do was start tapping into this thing we call purpose. People find that they want to find this purpose outside of them, but it's really an internal thing. It's based on the most natural strengths that you're here with, that you're born with, the light that you have to shine that creates this impact. It's so natural to you that it's hard for you to see that you're using it and that it's having an impact on people. So that was my first glimpse into what that purpose was. And I just knew that if I started doing more, I would like my work better. Even if it wasn't all of my work, I would like my work better if I did more of that. It was very intentional on my part to do that. I didn't know that was coaching at the time. Like I didn't label that as coaching, but that became a theme ongoing. So there was a point in time where a colleague reached out to me and said, there's this coach, she's offering a free session. Would you like one? And it was an immediate yes. And it was a yes for two reasons. One, I wanted the session. And two, I instantly knew like, I want to be a coach. I want to do what she's doing. So I met with her and I was going to talk to her about the future of my HR career. And it wasn't long before I was talking to her about how I fulfill this I want to be a coach thing. And I did that while I was working my full-time job. I got my coaching education while I was working my full-time job. I implemented a coaching program into the company I was working for. So there's a lot of work that I did before I made that so-called big leap that people say from my full-time job and into entrepreneurship. It's not the big leap that people think it is, or it doesn't have to be. And I think that's what I like to drive home is it doesn't have to be the scary thing where you turn your life upside down. There's so much that you can do in between to be preparing yourself for what it is that you want.
It makes me think of my friend Megan Hale. She just did an Instagram live with me and the Creative Law Shop, one of my companies. And we were talking to somebody in the comments who was like, hey, I'm just getting started. And she was like, you know what? One great thing you can do to take financial pressure off of your business, have a part-time job. Have something else that you enjoy that you can do part-time that ends when you kind of leave the building. And like you're saying, you don't have to make a change like 2 feet in, jumping off a cliff, hoping that the net appears. You can climb down, you can climb up, you can take a piece at a time. And I think so often doing what you did, where it's like, let's actually just, where do I start? Make a list. What do I like doing in my current role, in my current job, business, career? How do I just do more of that and help maybe do less of the things that you dread?
Absolutely. There's also what that process does. So I say that I help people to revive the careers that they've built. And some people might interpret that as stay stuck where you are. Like, we're just going to make good of this thing. Absolutely not. That's why I emphasize that there's a world of possibility between settling and quitting. And that's what we're going to play with. Because when you are where you are and you want something else, that want for the something else becomes really strong. And it makes you really dislike where you are because it's not that thing that you want. However, when you move into your next opportunity with that energy of desperation or haste, you're likely not going to make the best decision for you because the energetic intention of that move is not aligned with an energetic intention that actually feels good. You're running away from where you are. From where you are, you can start doing the work of not only doing more of what you like, so that was that first exercise, but then starting to identify what is it that I might want to know more of or learn about or get experience with, so that you can treat where you are like this vast playground of possibility, basically, to start testing things that you do or don't like, to start learning, to start engaging, so that you're more like calling that next thing into you rather than running towards it. That's a completely different energetic signature.
Well, and I love that too, because it goes into this kind of philosophy that I believe we share of, if you aren't taking care of what's inside first and the way that you're kind of perceiving the world around you and taking ownership of what's in front of you, I really believe that any change you make, you're just going to transfer your unhappiness with you. I come from a digital nomad background and we'd all, go travel the world. And a lot of people will do it and they're like, okay, if I leave this country, I leave all my problems and unhappiness behind. They're still inside you, so they kind of come with you. And I just love what you're saying is we're not going to stay stuck, but we can still take a breath, take a pause, reevaluate, and treat it like a playground so that we can make that next step or that next leap almost out of a place of, yeah, this is right, instead of, well, I got to be anywhere but where I am right now.
Yeah. You take yourself with you wherever you go. So that's a majority of work that we're doing, is just that deep transformational work, because as much as people don't want to hear it, largely what holds them back from what they want and where they want to go is themselves. Sure, there are external factors that might work to kind of hold you down, but still in every situation that you are in, you have a choice that you can make. So there's always this personal power and personal sovereignty that you have to be making a decision in any situation that you're in. It's the easy road to say, I can't because, and then point to anything that's outside of you. That's the excuse that holds you back, because sometimes it's easier to complain than to do the thing that you really want to do. But the discomfort of staying where you are will just compound if you don't start taking the steps towards what it is that you actually want.
It's so easy for us to sit here and say this stuff, but I know how hard it can be. I'm sure you know from your own experience too, of making change is hard and scary. And when I was like a teenager, I decided I was going to be different than everybody else. And I was like, I am going to love uncertainty and I am so good at change. And I just would tell myself this over and over. And then I think in the last 4 or 5 years, I've been like, okay, that actually wasn't true. And I can have more grace with myself and not, you know, you kind of deconstruct it as well. I want us to get a little bit more granular or tangible, and yeah, it's hard. And like, it is easier to just complain than it is to take ownership over it, especially if you haven't built that skill set or seen other people do that. Because a lot of times we just see the complacency and we don't understand the ownership. That's kind of what this podcast is to like secretly just implant in everybody's brain they can have ownership over it. But when you're working with your clients, what are some of the first steps or exercises or conversations you're having to help kind of like retrain this brain pathway or this idea of, okay, maybe you can take ownership or you can look at this differently? How do those conversations go?
So in that first phase of work, there's 3 things that come to mind that we're working on pretty well right away. One, it's an exercise that's been around forever. A lot of people use it, but it's the wheel of life. So within the wheel of life, there's just the different slices in this circle of those areas of your life that it's representing. So your relationship, your finances, your job, your passions, your parenting, just all those main areas. And we do that just to take an overall inventory, because there are times where you are focused on one part of your life being quote unquote bad. But when we take that overall inventory, sometimes it's highlighted for us that it's not just that one area, or there's another area where if we put our focus there, increasing satisfaction within that takes your sight off of that thing you thought was miserable. What comes to mind is I had an entrepreneur who thought that she was going to have to quit the business that she was running. The business was successful. Her heart wasn't in it anymore. Her passion for it seemed to have gone completely out. It wasn't long that we were working together that we discovered that the health and nutrition factor of her life was actually where it was. So she cleaned up the health and nutrition. She felt outstanding. The work wasn't a problem anymore. So the light had gone out, but it wasn't in the area of her life that she thought that it was. So that regained. So we start with that wheel of life just to take inventory. Boundaries, 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 energetic boundaries. The majority of people that I work with have some element to them of fixing, healing, helping, saving others. Perfectionism is a lot of times what that looks like, wanting things to go well, not wanting people to feel badly, not wanting to be perceived badly. There is a lot that falls into the bucket of fixing, helping, healing, saving. And when we're doing that, we're completely lacking boundaries for ourselves and we're disrespecting the boundaries of anybody else. We're also taking from them the growth experience that they are meant to have. So I talk a lot about the human experience. We are all here on our separate pathways. We don't know what's in store for ourselves, and we certainly don't know what's in store for others. So to try to stand in the way of their growth is to prevent them from following the pathway that they are here to explore and to evolve in. So fixing, healing, helping, saving, learning to take responsibility for our own energy, how we feel, what we want, speaking for that. Huge lesson. And it's like the one that we come back to time and time and time again, because whenever you start to feel rocky, it's usually a boundary that needs to be addressed. And then one of the biggest transformations is I work with people on their mind, body, soul alignment. So when your mind is open to the wisdom of your soul or your higher self or your intuition, whatever folks are comfortable expressing that as, when your mind is open to that wisdom, then it can logically think through what you need to do in alignment with what it is that's meant for you. Your body can be on board creating tangibly those things that your mind produces. Like it's this just completely open funnel and flow. However, there are 3 lenses through which I see that you see the world through. And one is fear, lack, and scarcity. The other is defensiveness, ego, judgment, and control. And the last is wisdom, clarity, and love. Those first 2 lenses are the ones that most people are walking around seeing the world through and making their decisions from. So when you're thinking about what you want to do in your career, you're in fear, lack, scarcity, defensiveness, ego, judgment, and control. Wisdom, clarity, and love is the harder one to source, especially if you're not familiar with what it sounds like. So we work to personify actually those three lenses so that you can see them as something outside of you to be able to kind of communicate with and to work with. That wisdom, clarity, and love, when you're inside of that persona, that is when that mind, body, soul channel is clear. When you're in those first two, something is blocking the flow of what's happening there. Like that's really the deeper internal transformational work that we are doing. And what it helps people to do is start to become empowered to make the decisions that are best for them. There are a lot of reasons that we don't make the decisions that are best for us. And in fact, sometimes we trick ourselves into saying me making the best decision for them is actually the best decision for me. If it's not best for you, it's not best for you.
Yeah. It is something I talk about a lot on this podcast too, is those nudges and the what ifs and those moments where it's like, okay, do I chase that? And I'm like, if you got a what if something's calling to you, go find out. But at the same time, I love how you're framing it as how do we, before we make the decision, get to a place where we feel confident in where that voice is coming from? Is it coming from that fear, that scarcity, that need of control? Or is it coming from like, okay, I'm feeling love, abundance, kind of clear-headed. I've been working through some of the stuff and seeing where the voice or the nudge comes from and being able to then decide, like you're saying, okay, where are we making this decision out of? If somebody is really, I don't want to say unfamiliar with, but maybe unfamiliar with or feeling like they just can't get to that like love, abundance, that kind of third silo that you were talking about, how do you even start to move into that headspace and full body alignment?
Oh gosh, there's so much that's based in honesty, and honesty can be really difficult to source with ourselves. But when we start talking about mind, body, soul alignment and just intuition in itself, we like to make intuition more complicated than it is. We like to think that it's this voice that we hear and it comes in really clearly and all of a sudden we have this aha. And I think, again, in our human experience, it's just one of the things that we desperately want is for it to be so clear. But like life isn't clear. Even your clearest vision, as you start walking towards it, becomes different. It morphs as you go along your path. On the side of intuition, I generally advise people to start becoming just in tune with their body, what is being communicated to them through their body, right down to what aches and pains do you have? What is your reaction when you hear something? Like, how did your body receive that? How is that sitting with you? The decisions that are best for you come with this energetic signature of, and this comes from my coaching school and their framework, but if it scares your mind and stirs your soul, it's the right step. So if you've got scares your mind and scares your soul, like we're probably looking at not the right thing. But if it scares your mind and stirs your soul, then you know you've sourced that uncomfortable thing to do as a human that is right for the soul of the human. So when it comes to that honesty, like I said, when you're working through kind of sitting in a moment and asking, like, if I were 100% honest with myself right now, what is it that I need? What is it that I would want? What support would I ask for? Just like 100% honest. Just sit with yourself in those. Allow yourself to be totally honest about that, which is hard because we filter ourselves even when we're alone and no one can hear our thoughts. And then just really tune into what your body is communicating to you about that. This body that we have and all of its senses is what intakes everything around us. When it intakes that information, it sends it to your mind, and your mind then determines what it is that you feel from that. So that's the cycle that we're looking to break up a little bit, is that automatic that's happening because it's based on everything in your life that has happened up until that point. And we're looking to create something new.
It reminds me of a trick that my mom always taught me when I had to make a decision that is basically, it doesn't matter which one you choose one and sleep on it. The next day, I'll either be like, yep, okay, great, that's the right decision. Or I'll find myself trying to redecide again. And it doesn't feel like I've actually decided because it isn't the right decision. And this is something I've seen. Actually, there's some really popular podcasters I used to listen to. One of them would tell this story about how it took 4 months for him to decide what medical school to go to. And I'm like, No, it didn't. You just didn't allow yourself to make the decision for 4 months because you didn't want the answer. But when we're coming back to the same question, even though we've made a decision, but that decision isn't sticking, isn't sitting in our body, that's one of the signals to me. The catalyst for this podcast was a huge breakup I went through about 3 years ago, where I was doing this for years of making a decision and then always coming back to it of, okay, I'll stay, and coming back to it. And it just never was sitting right. And eventually the relationship ended. And it was like, okay, I could have listened to myself a bit sooner, whatever that journey was that I needed. But it's this full body, like you're saying, full body alignment of, okay, is it just your brain that's kind of scared and hesitant and being too logical, but it feels good in your soul or it feels right in your body? Okay, just make a decision and then wake up in the morning and see how you feel has really helped me through some of those.
I love that advice from your mom. I think it's fantastic, especially the waking up in the morning and then, and then that's the direction you're going. There's still that hesitation. Like, two things come up for me when you say that is it's like the then what? You just take like a tiny action step. So once you've made the decision, you just take a tiny action step. Again, I think we like to relate that making the decision to like this big thing and now everything has to change or whatever it is. You take one small step. So even if that thing that you decided is, I want to do a 180 pivot on my career. It's like, wow, that's scary. It feels true, but that's scary and I can't do that. Okay. Well, then just Google something today. Like just look up something about that thing that you were thinking and see what's out there. How might you walk down that path? What are the skills that cross over between those two that maybe you already have going for you that could be translated into something completely different? Who's somebody that's doing that you could just sit and have coffee with and talk to them about how they got there, what they like about it, what they don't. Like there's a lot that you can do that doesn't disrupt your life that allows you to start really entertaining that thing that you are being pulled towards. The other thing that came up is in relation, when we talk about how we really don't know the long-term vision. We set one, we walk towards it, but we can really only plot the next 1, 2, or 3 steps in front of us. We start walking that direction. We learn about ourselves. We learn more about that vision. We pivot as we go. But the difference is that you're walking towards something that you want while also knowing that you cannot have what you want in a vice grip because that's just not how this works. With your mom's advice, there's one that I use all the time that sounds so trivial. But if I'm trying to decide anything, and this is from what earrings I put on or what I need to do, I say, okay, so this decision, if the time is even, I pick this one. If the time is odd, I pick this one. And then I look at my watch. If it's odd, that's this. Those smaller things, great. Like that just keeps me moving. I'm no longer thinking about that thing that really doesn't matter. I picked it. I've gone about my business. When you do that process, you'll notice how you react to it. If you have that, feeling after you look, it's like, okay, you didn't want the ones that were on even. You wanted the ones that were on odd. So pick the ones that are on odd and move about your business. It gives us something to react to. The way that this all works is action is what allows us the clarity to figure out what we want. So those little action steps, and having something that we react to allows us more clarity on what it is that we really do or don't want. So just paying attention to the or ooh kind of feelings that we get. Again, it comes down to this body thing that's happening, but yeah, I look at my watch, odd or even, and then move about my day.
I love that. Well, and it's like when you put those two things together of what do I want? What is the next thing I'm moving towards? You can even say, okay, in 6 months, I want to have this progress towards it, or in a year, and you figure it out. Like you said, okay, this next step, what's my reaction? Mm-hmm. And let the path appear opposed to trying to see the whole path before you take a first step. It's a very common way of looking at this, or people talk about it like this a lot. And I love it because to me, it makes so much sense of just take the next right step, just head in that direction. And maybe the thing you think you want is actually going to get you to this other thing that is a fit. And you don't have to know that right now. We just have to move in that direction.
What you said is actually bigger than you just presented it. Because again, here I am and here I want to be, there's a lot in between where you are and where you want to be. If we think of it in the way of this vision that you have over here, whatever that is that you want, there is a version of you that already exists in that vision. She has already done all of the growth, all of the evolving that needed to happen for her to be there. That's not where you are. You haven't experienced any of those things. And it's not just a matter of jumping from here to there. there are a lot of things along that path that to you might not make sense to getting there, but they're not going to make sense to you. Again, that's not how this works. But it's the thing that you need to confront in order to get to that place. When we have a challenge in front of us, an obstacle, a thing we didn't want, we like to see that as something that is in our way and or signaling that we're going the wrong way. Those don't have to be true. You have to make peace with those so-called obstacles. They're not in your way. They are the thing that you need to do to get to that place that you want to go. So in every single day, when we have challenge, and we will have challenge every single day, if we stop calling it that thing that's in my way and start calling it, okay, this is the thing that I'm doing today, you completely change your perspective on it. You take that big, heavy power out of it that you gave it, and instead it's just the thing that you're doing today. If we take that dramatic emphasis out of it, it becomes a lot more palatable as we go along towards that vision.
Well, and I think of really tangible examples of this is like if you do want a promotion or you want to kind of horizontally transfer into a new role, and it's like, okay, maybe it's a new skill set you need. And so it's every day, I'm just becoming more like that person. And it's this act of becoming and kind of just the human experience of doing and of being a little bit more each day. I'm going to be in a class and learn this job a little bit more, or this new skill set I want. Or with this podcast, I'm like, okay, before I knew what I wanted this podcast to be, I just knew I wanted one. And I knew I would never have the answer for what it was until I was recording episodes, until I was posting them and having more conversations. And so I still don't know what the end point of this is, but it's not about that as much as the doing, the being, and just the kind of like weekly muscle of recording and editing and posting and seeing what parts of the conversation really resonate with people.
Yeah, I know that like people hate hearing that it's not the destination, it's the journey, but it's true. Like I said, I would point at things I wanted, and that's the direction I would go in my corporate career. And there was one of them that I applied for a position and I really, really wanted it, and came down to me and one other person, and the other person got it. So of course, it doesn't feel good. We see that as failure, but ultimately what I did get was another position. It was brand new to the company. They hadn't had it before. So I got to trailblaze, which is one of my favorite things to do, I found. And that position let me a whole new skill set that I didn't have. And the next time that that other position came open, I applied and I got it. Like it offered me just so much maturity and growth. So how on earth was that failure? How on earth was that failure? So it just goes to show it really is the journey. So those things you don't get that feel like failure, let yourself be with that feeling. Part of the program that I do, like we are acknowledging and processing emotions, because those introspective, high achieving professionals I work with, we need to lean on the introspective, because in their career, they've had to lean on the high achieving far too much. So we really have to see what are we actually feeling about something and acknowledge that. So you get to be with that, but then you get to decide, okay, now what next? What do I get to do next? So then we're back in that, here's my situation, not exactly what I wanted. But again, I always have a choice as to what it is that I'm going to do.
I'm looking at my bookshelf here because there's a book, The Second Mountain by David Brooks.
Oh, I've heard of it.
Okay, I keep thinking of this and I was like, didn't want to just look over mid-conversation, but this book talks about what happens when you have climbed the ladder, followed your dreams, you're at the top of the mountain, now what? Because the destination doesn't satisfy us for more than a split second. It really is kind of the journey. And even in your own story that you were telling us at the beginning of this conversation of having the corporate, and then you're like, I've spent 20 plus years building this career. I don't want to have to change it, but maybe the process is over and you've reached the final destination there. And that's not the final destination of your story, your life, your growth. And this book really talks about that. And David Brooks shares examples of people, super high achieving CEOs of company who loved their career, loved their life. They felt like everything was working. They become CEO, and now all of a sudden they're unhappy and their relationships are suffering, and the company and all of these pieces, because they now don't have that thing to strive for, or they've reached the success and it's okay, well, now there's only more to want again, and kind of having that lack of clarity. And everything you're saying reminds me so much of this conversation in this book, because it is a reminder that it's not the career, it's not the job you're in, it's you and what you're getting out of it and what you're putting into it. And you working with these high achieving professionals who I assume some of them have reached maybe the top of their career and are in this place, this second mountain of, okay, now what? Now where does my purpose take me? Now what do I want since I've done it all on the career front?
I was writing down notes as you were talking, because when we're super focused on career and we get to that point in career, like you're saying, they're at the top and now they're in the now what, even if that means a pivot, there's this automatic thinking we have of, okay, so then everything I built, I'm throwing it away. I have to start over. We've really got to break down that automatic thinking, because just like a book has many, many chapters, we have many, many chapters. So everything that we do builds us to where we are. So even those so-called failures or wrong paths, whatever it is, there's actually no such thing. It's just building the human that we are, and it's building the life that we have. So if we've been super focused on career and achieving, we're going to get stuck in the now what, because we've already achieved the so-called top. You could look for that same position at a bigger company. You could do all of those things, but the hyper focus on the one area is actually what is going to cause you more issues than anything else. Typically in high achievers and typically hitting that peak, we don't always get there by paying a lot of attention to who we are and what we want. We get there by following the rules and showing up in the way that people want us and putting ourselves in a position to receive that promotion and performing in the way that we need to. It's generally very conditioned from outside of us as to what needs to be done to get to that place. So that wheel of life exercise that I had talked about, that's why we start there. It's like, okay, great, killed it in career. And now you feel stuck again. Like, what about any other area of your life that we could be looking to be more aware of, or depending on our language, optimize, like whatever it is that we want to do? Like, there's so much more that we could be looking at. When I work with people on purpose, really what your purpose is to just rediscover your ever evolving self and integrating that person into the world. There's this cycle, that hero's journey that you go on, where you leap, you go to hell and back, you learn about yourself, you come up with that insight, and then there's this process of this new version of you. You have to integrate her into the world. And that can be really vulnerable, because she integrates into the world differently than the version of you did before, which means that you either have people that adapt to that, or you have people that don't, or environments and situations that adapt to that, or they don't. So that's in purpose. But because that's so big and you can't quite put your hands around it, I actually work with people on creating what I call a purpose statement. So mine is written over here, and it says, my purpose is to use my empathy and intuitive understanding to transform individuals via self-discovery, one by one, creating a ripple effect in the world. I love one-on-one. I love this like process of what I feel is almost like infiltration. So if I can't change something from the top, I'm going to work one-on-one with people, and we're just going to keep putting them in the places and creating the change. So the more folks that we have in these corporate spaces that are aware of themselves and respect that a whole human is in the workplace and that not one part of us is checked at the door, the more understanding, inclusive, relatable, empathetic these places are going to be. And we can finally function as humans within a workplace, rather than this hustle that we got to along the growth, starting with that whole industrialization. I could go off there, but I won't. What I will say, bringing it back, is that with that purpose statement, you can use it at work, you can use it in parenting, you can use it in relationship, you can use it talking to somebody in a grocery store line. Like I said, it's just something that's really natural to you, and you'd have a hard time shutting it off if you tried. So it's like, if we really used it in career, and I'm going to put a question mark on that, because a lot of them at the top of their game haven't really used it in career. So there's a whole nother avenue where we could go of how we're actually showing up at work and what we want to do differently. But also any other area, how do we want to engage that in all of these other spaces to make our life just more full?
Well, and I love that you call that out, because this is something I'm very aware of in the entrepreneurship space. And anybody that I'm learning from, I'm always very observant of the fruits of their life. So somebody who is the most visible on social media, seems to have the largest company, the largest following. I'm always looking for those cues of, are they actually? Because personally, I know that the more you show up on social media, the less you're probably showing up in your real life. Some people have it optimized and automated really well. most of us don't. I mean, based on movies and just, general culture, we see this a lot in who's sitting in the C-suite and how, yeah, you might have pushed so hard, high achieving, and then you get there and you're like, okay, well, the rest of my life doesn't look the way I want it to, or I've now pushed in this career in this company that maybe my values don't actually align with. And I was on this ladder. And yeah, where is the mission statement? Where is the value statement? One question I love coming back to, I started doing this year. What would my 90-year-old self say? Like when my 90-year-old self is looking at 29-year-old Teresa, what is she saying? How would she make that decision? And what would she wish she would have done? I always love these little tricks of like, okay, if your life was a movie, what would you do? That was how I got through my early 20s. And that's why I traveled everywhere. Because it was like, okay, well, the script writers wouldn't write me sitting on a couch in my dorm. And so these little tricks, again, to kind of shake us out of our life and get back to that kind of intuition, that kind of who are we really and what are we really here for?
What did your 90-year-old self say to you?
Oh, she's like, right now, actually, I'm like, this is my last summer to be in my 20s and I am going to enjoy it. That is what she's saying. We will never be in our 20s again. 29 often feels like, oh, I'm almost 30. I'm getting older. I have to be mature. I have to figure it out. And that's not what my 29 or my 20s are about. We're going to be in our 20s for the last time. I went to the Men's College World Series. I'm going to Italy for a month later this year. I'm trying to get to the pool as much as possible. And I'm also working really, I don't want to say hard, but very strategically running 3 companies. I just started a local podcast network in Omaha to get podcasters together. In some ways, full steam ahead, but knowing that my work life, full steam ahead, is still 50%, not 100%. And I'm spending 50% really living and enjoying and prioritizing being young, which I think my 90-year-old self will be younger than I am today. That's the goal. But still really not getting caught up in the timeline, the age. I think my 30s will be better than my 20s. Whoever gets scared of their 30s, I think I tried to fight against that as well. But that is what she's watching the last year of my 20s, being like, girl, you better enjoy it. We will never be 29 again.
If I think about mine, so I'm 45. I'm halfway there to her. And I've never had trouble turning any certain age. And that's for a darker reason. I lost a lot of people young. I saw a lot of young people pass, and it put it into perspective for me, like way too early, that each year I get is a year that I get. And that was especially true when I saw parents who had lost their child. Of like, I still get to be here, and like what they wouldn't give to watch their children age just one more year. So like I have a lot of peace with age, and I'm really grateful for it. But like my 90-year-old self, when you said that, one, she's saying like, I'm 90. So nothing you're going through is the thing that's going to end you. So maybe don't take it so seriously. We're there, like chill out.
We made it past.
Right.
We're still living.
You're good. And then there's 2 things that come up for me is one, it'll likely come up later too, is I've started pushing past some of the perfectionism. That's always the thing that creeps up for me is perfectionism. So it'll slow me down on something that I thought to do. So I've been doing a lot more of just like pushing go on part of it and then catching up, so that like I can't give myself the excuse not to, because I already pressed go. So something's depending on me. And also I'm especially feeling it now, because when it comes summertime, I really like to sink into summer. I really like to slow down, and the evenings are longer, and there's time to be with my family and just really enjoy what this is actually all about. And she's given me full permission, because again, she's 90, so slowing down didn't hurt her any. She's good. I'm just like, okay, if you want to be with summer, just be with summer in whatever way that you can. Don't worry about what the slowdown does. Instead, understand that the slowdown is what helps you speed up.
I love it. Our 90-year-old selves sound amazing.
I love her.
I can't wait to hang out with them.
Yeah.
But it is, again, it puts it in perspective of, okay, I could work 4 more hours tonight and get a little bit more done or perfect something. And I could do that all summer. And then I look back and I don't remember my last summer in my 20s. I got the work done. And again, it goes back to who do I learn from and what is the fruit of their labor? And often the loudest voices are the easiest to learn from, and they are pushing past their summer evenings. And I'm very cautious to not feel like that's the advice I'm letting sink in. That's the coaching that I'm getting, and trying to, again, just be aware and reconstruct the way that I'm choosing to live out that purpose statement, to show up. And even if I'm 10% less productive, 50%, 80% less productive in a day, great,
That's
amazing.
by our own definition, and it's just not true.
Yeah. Let's get into the last series of questions, which are the obsession questions. And since we are talking about summer, I want to know what you're obsessed with in summer. How are you spending those slow, long, light-filled evenings and days?
Yeah, there's witchy patio. So my partner, my husband, poor him, because there's sometimes that like just these thoughts come out of nowhere and then he's along for a ride with me. But I was sitting there the one day, I was like, I want to make our patio a witchy patio.
Ooh.
Of course, at first he's like, what does that mean? I was like, it really doesn't mean anything big. But like we ended up with like this little sort of fire pit thing and chairs. We have 2 raised beds of just fruit, vegetable, herbs, sort of things that we're taking care of. We have some pots that started from seeds. So we're seeing what happens with those tomato plants. This beautiful fern I called, his name is Stan. I'm actually awful with plants, but there's a bunch up here that I've kept alive and it's all experimental. So again, not going for perfection. We're just going to do the thing and then I'll catch up and see how it goes. But we have those, like all of that that's down and around. I'm going to string some lights up above. And it's just this little sanctuary. And I've loved doing this since I was little. Like I've always loved just creating little spaces for me to be that are like have been arranged by me and are just exactly what I want. And they don't have to be pretty. They're mine and they're comfortable. And they're like this little escape from everything around me. Like that has remained true my entire life. So this is just another little space that I'm creating that we can just be in.
It sounds, when you say like a witchy patio, I think of it, it almost in my head feels like a ritual is the word that's coming up, where it's just having that space where you go to at a certain time of day. And yeah, you get to sit around the fire pit and it becomes this slow, enjoyable kind of ritual.
I love routine, ritual, and rhythm. Like all of those things, they all have their different way of thriving, but that's what it feeds into. You're right.
I will say, if you are, I don't want to say bad at taking care of plants, or you want low maintenance plants, my sister has a company called Bumbling Bee Natives and sells native wildflowers.
That's what I put in the pots. So the things from seed are all like native to our area. Because it's funny you say that. That's one of the specific things that I told my husband is like, I want native plants. I want this to feel like it belongs because we do so much like curating of lawns and all these things that don't belong there. And when we think of like the big wildfires they had in California, part of the problem was a lot of the plants that are there that are not native to the area that weren't conditioned to be able to take any sort of heat or element like that. There are things that are to be native to the space that we're in.
Well, I'll send you a link to her business. I don't know any of the technical language, but like seeds, germinates them so that you get this kind of like small plant that you can put into the ground. But yeah, it's been really fun. She started that 3 years ago and I always plug it whenever I can.
Oh, please do. Because I mean, it's not by chance that this conversation come up. Like we end up on native plants. No, I was meant to hear about it. So
yeah, no, I love it. I went to vote in the mayoral election and somehow even then was like telling the volunteers there about native plants. And they're like, we were just talking about milkweeds. It is gaining a lot of traction, I think, as well. And so it's fun to see all the people who care and are like, let's get natives, let's get more pollinators, let's do this.
I love that she's doing that.
I want to know, when it comes to coaches, educators, podcasts, maybe even just entertainment, what's filling your cup these days?
Oh, and I did not expect this answer to come up. We had been talking just before we got started that I up-leveled my credential from ACC to PCC with an ICF. It's not an easy process. It's lots of hours of coaching. It's a 3-hour proctored exam, lots of education. However, sinking back into that process of learning all the technicalities of coaching, which I hadn't forgotten, but had not had to immerse myself in so deeply, it fueled me again, just for the purity of coaching. People often understand coaching to be a they tell you what to do or give you advice or consult kind of position. And it's not, it's one that really holds like really true space for the person that you're speaking to. And you're just navigating the conversation in such a way that it's like pulling out these pieces of wisdom from the person themselves. Because when the wisdom comes from within you, you actually integrate it into your life because you had all the sparks that made that. And you know that it's true to you. It wasn't given to you by somebody else. We get advice from plenty of places. It was just sinking back into the true art of coaching and what it is to be present for somebody in that moment that I didn't expect it to fill me up because you're studying for a proctored exam. But there's something about the basics of anything that going back into the basics just has this really solid grounding foundation to it.
And it's so nice in today's world of 30-second everything to go into depth again and really deepen the knowledge and the experience of going into it. So I can see how, especially when it's something that you truly love and you truly see an impact on, it feels really good.
Yeah,
I love it. How can people work with you and just stay in your world?
absolutely. So I'm primarily on Instagram and LinkedIn as Angela McKay or Angela McKay LLC. Really easy to find me. Website is angelamackayllc.com. I try to keep it real simple, not so creative in that aspect. My foundational programs are Soul-Led Career. It's a 4-month transformation, or Career Catalyst, which is a 1-month, 28-day intensive. So when people don't know which one, I always have a free consult to connect with somebody to figure out which path would be better for them. There's single services as well, including tarot readings. Because like you mentioned with the biddy, I integrate tarot into the work that I do. People have the option, whether it's included or not. I have not had anyone say no, because people are pulled into my world for a certain reason. And tarot is not a predictive tool. It's just used to gain perspective. It opens up pathways that perhaps our minds aren't thinking about to give us something to consider as we're going forward. So I integrate that. Usually I have events, classes to lead an aligned career. They want the easiest place to get started. Just download my freebie Career Compass on the front page. And that's that exercise that'll help you just get that glimmer into purpose so that you can start taking charge of your career in a way that feels good for you at the smallest, easiest level.
Amazing. Thank you so much for coming on Becoming Obsessed. I love that I get to have an episode that's for my 9-to-5ers as well, because I feel like so often I'm like, guys, I promise I don't hate 9-to-5. It just isn't my path. I don't talk about it. So I love that we got to bring this experience to Becoming Obsessed. And if you are still hanging out with us, we want to know. Send me a voice note on Becoming Obsessed Pod on Instagram and let me know if this resonated or if there is a kind of sticky point in your career that you're working through. Reach out to Angela and send this to a friend. Post it on your story. Sharing the podcast, giving us a 5-star review helps us get Becoming Obsessed in front of more people so they can live a life that they love too. All right, y'all, let's go get obsessed.